the bottom. The true. We did it already. We got to the bottom already yesterday. Now, the next page, the top of Chaf Ches. A bit bigger. So here it talks about now weighing that we already talked about a lot of the trapping and shefting, and now also about how you divide. We said yesterday at the end of the sugi we said not to talk money, and now we're talking about weighing. You want to weigh how much you're giving it. But the butcher he's selling without talking money, but he's selling. So you want to weigh how much he's giving each person. So are you allowed to weigh on a scale? So it says no, you're not allowed to. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Everybody holds they're not allowed to weigh the regular method, which would be of a scale that has two cups, and you put a weight on one side and the meat on the other side. You have weights of a liter, a kilo, whatever it might be. So that you show you're not allowed to do. But Rabbi Yehuda says that you're allowed to weigh against an object. That if you have a kli, whatever it might be, a kofetz is a cleaver, you have a certain kli that you already measured before, so it's not usually used as a weight, but you know how much it weighs. You know that this is a kilo, and it's a shinoi. So the fact that you're not using a regular weight, but you're using an object, but you happen to know how much it weighs, so that's enough of a shinoi. But the Chum say no, you don't look at the scale at all. Don't pay attention to the scale at all, which sounds like no, you're not allowed to. Right. That even the shinoi is also. But the more is impressed with the lashon emashgichen, don't use it at all. You don't look at it. Don't pay attention to it. So why did they use such an elaborate term? My kolikah. What does the Mishnah mean to say with the words kolikah? At all. Don't use it at all. That even if you're using the scale, not as a scale at all, you're just using it because it's something which is high up, like they used to have a scale with two cups and a hanging from the ceiling or something like that. So it's a place that you would, it's considered safe from mice. So you want to put food in a place which the mice can't get to, so you put it on something which is dangling from the air, and that's a nice place. Nothing to do with a scale. You're not using it as a scale at all. Using it as a suspended object. It doesn't have anything to do with the scale aspect. Still, the Rabbanan say no, don't use a scale at all, even if you're just using it as a protection from the mice. But it's only also when it's hanging on that terita. Terita, Rashi says, means that ring that's hanging from the ceiling, the place where you have the scale hanging, that it is a scale right now, and you're using it because you want to get rid of it shouldn't be vulnerable to the mice, but you're doing it in a place where it's hanging. But if you would take it off, let's say in a place where it's not hanging on the scale, let's say you want to use these bowls of the scale to put something to use it as a bowl, that would be permissible because you're not using it in a regular way of how it's acting as a scale. So that's what you pass like the Rabbanan. We'll see soon the sugya, but halacha l'maaseh is going to be like the Rabbanan, that you don't use a scale at all. Again, nowadays the application doesn't happen too much, but you're not allowed to use a scale. And not only, and the shinu is not good enough, and the Gemara says even more, even if you're not using it as a scale at all, you're just using it because you want something to be suspended in the air. Also, it's asa. New Gemara, more is about weighing. A professional butcher that he's very sensitive to weight, he knows from his experience. So he's not allowed to measure even by his own hands. So Rashi says that he takes a weight in one hand and he puts the meat in the other hand, and he's able to, just because of his sensitivity, he's able to tell if it's equal or not. Also, it's asa. Rashi is a little bit mashma that if he just takes it in his hands without a weight and just says this is berach a kilo, that would be mutter. But the Rebbe Chanal is mashma, even that's also asa. Even that's also asa. That once happened. I once was in a grocery store. Just interesting that there was a hafsakat chashmal. There was a blackout, and the scale wasn't working, the electronic scale. So someone said, "I trust you, whatever you say." So he took it in his hand, whatever the chicken over there, and he said, whatever kilo v'chatzik. So people who are used to it, that's their business the whole day, so they're sensitive to it. And it says that tabachuman is not allowed to do that on Yantav. That's also considered weighing. A new Gemara, Amar Yehuda Mashmuel. All these Gemaras are the name of Yehuda Mashmuel. Tabach Uman. Some take out these words Tabach Uman because this case, the case a line ago, Taka had to do with his profession, but here it doesn't have to do anything about being special about a Tabach Uman. Some take out these two words. Asa Lishkal Basa B'Mayim. You're not allowed to weigh meat in water. How do you weigh meat in water? So Rashi seems to say that if you happen to know the relationship between the weight and the volume, and you put it into water, and the level of the water goes up. What?
You have a kli, like it's like
Okay.
a meter kli, and the water falls
Right,
out.
so that's only volume. So really, it's only measuring the volume, not the weight. Usually, when you do that, you don't usually. So Rashi seems to say that you are weighing according to you happen to know how much that volume is. But there's also another shot that they say that you have just apparatus how you set it up. You take a full kli of water, a big pot of water. And you take a small kli, it's much smaller, empty, and you put it out. You put it into it floats inside, and you put the object inside the empty kli. It's going to weigh down, and you already set up that as much as it goes down, it's going to make the water level go higher on the sides. So then it's that method is already translating the weight to the volume to volume. So for every time, every inch, whatever that the weight that goes down, that's going to be according to the weight. The weight is going to press it down. That's going to cause the water level to go up, displace the water. So that's translating the machinery you made, the apparatus is already translating. It's a scale of weight. It's a scale of weight. So whatever the case would be, you're not allowed to do these things. So you're not allowed to do even this Meshunadik way, not the regular way. Also, you're not allowed to weigh meat in water also.
What is Rashi saying? It's the Famayim?
Rashi just seems to say put the meat into the water and it displaces it, that the water level goes up. Not that it spills over, but the water level goes up. You have schnusses over there, you have markings, and you know already the relationship of the volume to the weight. You're going to do the method on your own. I said a way how it's possible that the machine already is going to translate the weight into the volume. But Rashi says that it just measures the volume. In the volume, and I know that volume is so and so weight. But that's the other pshat maybe is mamish. The thing translates mamish. You put an empty kli into a full kli of water, and the empty kli is floating on top, and as much as it gets pressed down, the weight that's going to cause the water level to go up. So the apparatus already is translating the weight into volume. So okay, either way is also probably. New Gemara. So we had all kinds of things about weighing. The Mishnah says you're not allowed to weigh at all. You can't use the scales at all. The Gemara says and then it said that you can't even Talmud can't weigh by hand, and also you can't use a water scale. New Gemara.
Rabbi, it seems here that the Isser hasn't actually to do with measuring, but more to do with uvda dechol. Is that correct?
Yes, but the measuring is uvda dechol. That's what it's saying. Why is it also? I should have mentioned. Rashi says, what's the problem of all this? Why are you not allowed to weigh and measure? What's the problem? Because uvda dechol. All this, no real malacha that's happening, but it's a weekday. So the Chazal Kovay was called weekday, and all these things are called weekdayish. And even though he did a shino, it's still called weekday. The whole yisod of this Mishnah, this whole sugya, is because uvda dechol, it looks too much on the weekday way of doing things. The Gemara continues. They take out the vav because it's not continuation. It's even doesn't have anything to do with weighing. You can't make a handle on the meat. So the way they would usually do it, nowadays you don't see this happening, but if you want to carry a piece of meat home, big piece of meat, so the butcher will make a hole with a knife and you can put your hand in. Like sometimes you go a package, they make a handle for you. They have a big box, so they make a handle. So they make a handle on the piece of meat, built in. You don't have to do anything. You just make a hole in the meat and then you could stick in your hand and or your finger and carry it like that. So
the handle is basically the meat itself.
Yeah, right. But it's the week. Rashi seems to say that usually you do this only when you're buying and selling. If you're doing it in your house, no reason to make a handle for it. You just take it from the kitchen to the no reason to make a handle on it. But when you're taking it home from the butcher, so then you have a handle. You see people walking the street with a piece of meat, and that's how they would be in those days. So that looks like buying and selling. So it's two weekdays. So you're not allowed to make this base yard. You can't make the handle on the meat. If you didn't make it with a knife, you just with your finger, you poked in a hole and you put your fingers in. That's okay. You can't cut out a handle in the meat. So that's interesting. There's nothing to do with our issue about weighing, but a similar idea that it shouldn't look like regular business. You're allowed to make some kind of simon to know that this is yours. It also has a logic implications. Talks about that it shouldn't be basar shana salmon and sometimes you're allowed to make a simon in the meat, and the way you cut it, that you should know that this is the same meat that I had. It didn't get switched with something else. It could also be stam. You don't want to get confused. Whose meat is whose? This is my piece. This is your piece. So they made a simon. So that's mutter, even though we said that you're not allowed to make a hole, and that we said before a handle, but to make a simon is not considered of the hole. That's permissible. Rabbi Bar Avuna used to make a triangle when he wanted to make a simon in his meat. He would cut it into a triangle. Rashi has a picture over here of the triangle. If you went to try to make it, so there it is. So You make it
Plus
with
Karnas,
three corner triangle. So that let's say plus kind. So you let him make even on Yom Tov, you let him make the simon to know that it's Yom. That's not considered Rub to the Chol. The Gemara continues back to weighing the new sugya. Back to this issue why the Gemara brought in two things over here about making a handle in the meat and also making a simon in the meat. A handle is aser, a simon is mutter. They, when they would divide something, they would put it on the scale and put the meat on both sides of the scale, not with any kind of weight and not a clear, nothing. They would put meat on both sides. They wanted to divide it equally. So how do you divide equally? You put meat on one side, meat on the other side until it balances out. So they knew that they're going to divide equal portions. They bought the shutfus, whatever the case was, and then they wanted to divide it. So how do you divide it equally? You put meat on both sides until there's a balance. So they knew that they had the same amount. And that's a chiddush because our mission says all kinds of things that you're not allowed to weigh. And here you're weighing it in a way to divide it. So they said that it's mutter. And Rashim and Rebbe, when they would divide on Yantif, they would do it on the scale up against the portion. The Gemara says it's against our Mishnah. Come on, lo Rabbi Yehuda, lo Rabbi Banan. It's against our Mishnah. Both seats of our Mishnah. Ik Rabbi Yehuda ha'ama shokolad mosa keneged akli or keneged akofetz. That means keneged akli and keneged midach minalo. That the shinui that the Mishnah says that you do it against a kli, you put an object on the other side of the scale. That's a much bigger shinui than putting meat on both sides. When you put meat on both sides, that's the regular way that Rashi says that's how you divide something. It's true. If you want to weigh it, you don't weigh it like that. But when you want to divide something, that's the way to divide. You take half the portion on one side, half the portion on the other side, and then you adjust it until it's equal, and then you know that you have equals. That's a normal way. So Rabbi Yehuda wouldn't have permitted that. He only permits when you do a shinui, like putting a kli or a cleaver on the other side. And the Rabbanan surely asked, the Rabbanan say ignore the scale completely. Top line on the screen, Ikra Rabbanan. They say that you're not allowed to use it at all. I've said before, even to protect it from the mice. So surely you're not allowed to put the meat on both sides of the scale. So how did they paskin that you're allowed to weigh the meat against meat? The answer is in David Rabbi Yeshua. They found the Tana. Rabbi Yeshua. There's a price. Rabbi Yeshua says allowed to do this. The Tana Rabbi Yeshua Omer Shoklan Mana Keneged Mana B'Yam. The Pamish's case is that you're allowed to do it. You're allowed to do a portion against a portion and nothing on the scale. So that this Rabbi Yeshua surely argues on the Rabbanan of our Mishnah, who say you don't use the scale at all. And even Rabbi Yehuda was only Mater Keneged Kli, Keneged Kofitz, and they said that you're allowed to do a portion against a portion. So they pass him like Rabbi Yeshua against our Mishnah. Omer Rabbi Yosef. Allah Rabbi Yeshua.
Rebbe, Rashi is an interesting liner. He says, Kach derek kol chokim, meaning he's saying that is absolutely 100% the normal way, and that's why we're not going to allow it. Is that correct?
Yes, but we'll see that Rashi says that that's only when you want to divide something. It means it's not the derech to do that when you want to know how much it weighs, because then you have to know already one of the pieces of meat how much it weighs. And then you do the other one against that. But Rashi says when you want to divide, that is the normal way of dividing. And still he said that's mutter. Still it's mutter. Because they only answered weighing, they didn't answer dividing. And even though now after everything, you don't know how much it weighs. You just know that it's equal. So they held that it's mutter. Bishur says it's mutter. A piece of meat against a piece of meat. They want to divide it, so they put meat on both sides. No. Two people are dividing. The story of actually they wanted to divide equally. They bought up a shutfus. They wanted to have equal portions, so they put it on both sides of the scale till it balances out. So then they know that is. So even though that's machlokes, our mission says that it's also. Bishur says that it's mutter. Here and Rav Shimon Rebbe, they did like that they were divided. So as Rashi says, that's no normal way to divide. You don't get the weight. You don't know how much it weighs, but you just know that it's equal, and that is the machlokes. Our mission hold that it's also. Yeshua says that it's mutter, and that's how Chia and Rav Shimon Rebbe would actually do. Amr of Yosef, Halacha Rabbi Yeshua. He wants to bring a proof to Rabbi Yeshua that you should pass like that you're allowed to weigh a portion against a portion. I'm sorry that it's not highlighting correctly. He has a mission of Bechoros that he's going to compare to our Mishnah. So a little preview. This thing about Bechoros is not going to be talking about dividing. It's going to be talking about the other aspect of Rashi. The Rashi says that you could, if you have two pieces of meat and you know how much one weighs, you're allowed to, if you weigh the other piece of meat against it, so you're doing meat against meat. And here in the Bechoros, it's going to say that it's mutter. So a little introduction. Let's see the Mishnah, the Tanan, Suliam and Shulchan Mon Keneged Mana B'Bechor. So there are two parts of the Mishnah over here. There's Psul Mikdash and there's Bechor. Psul Mikdash means all kinds of carbonates that became Balmum, something became wrong with it. Psul Mikdash. What's the din over there? You pod it, you redeem it, and then you're allowed to, and the money you use for another carbon. You buy a new carbon with the money that you got. It's hektish money, and the animal that you sold, so that already is redeemed, and you're allowed to sell it. When you sell it, so it is a little bit kodesh. Still means that you were poded already, but the fact that it was once a carbon, so we do treat it with certain respect. The fact that it was once a carbon, even though you redeemed it, and here it says you're allowed to sell it in the market, even though it's a little bit of a bizoyon to take carbon meat. It's not a carbon. It's already puzzle and it became redeemed. But the fact that it once was a carbon, so we would try to respect it as much as possible. But it says, even so, we are going to allow you to sell it in the market, like regular meat, and also to use a scale to sell it by weight, even though it's considered a bit of a bizoyon. And the reason is because anasam hektish, the money that you're going to get from the sale is going to go to hektish. What do you do when you put the hektish? You sell it to anybody, and the animal, the meat, becomes chulin, and the money is a kodesh, and the money you go buy another carbon. So we want to make that it should be a good deal. You should get good money for it. So they said that you're allowed to sell in the market. When you sell in the market, you get a better price. If you sell it at home, so you don't have such a big demand, and the price is going to go down. But if you sell it in the market, it costs more. Also, if you can sell it by only estimate, the price is not so good. You have to estimate. But if you can do it on the scale, there's more reason to get a good price. So Psula Mikdashin, since I'm not selling hektish, since the money goes to hektish, so it's hektish's gain to get a good price on it. So we allow you to sell it in the market and also to weigh it. But Bechor, Rashi says also Meiser, you're not allowed to, because over there, Anas on the Bailam, the owner gets the benefit of the deal. It's not you're not going to be told that at Bechor. You're just going to eat the meat, and you can sell the meat also, but the money is going to go to the owner. So therefore, we're not going to be mezalzel in the Bechor and the Meiser Behem also to sell it in the market and to weigh it. So that's the halacha. It leaves out a lot in this Mishnah that's being quoted. Rashi tells us it leaves out a lot, but the point is to say that Psula Mikdashin, you're allowed to sell in the market in the itlas, and you're allowed to weigh it on the scale. But Bechor, you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to, because Anas on the Bayil, not Anas on hektish. But the Mishnah, the main point we want is these next words, that even though you're not allowed to weigh Bechor, you're not allowed to weigh the meat of a Bechor, but Shochan Mana Keneged Mana Bechor, you are allowed to weigh a piece of meat against another piece of meat, even though you're not allowed to weigh it, but this is considered not weighing. So here, Rashi points out that this is not doing in order to make it equal portions. You're doing it in order to sell it. And it must be that one piece of meat, you know already how much it weighs. You know, let's say chulin meat. Chulin meat you could put on the scale, and you know how much it weighs, a kilo of meat. Now you put this onto the scale with another piece of Bechor meat on the other side, and now you know how much it weighs. So the Gemara at this point is comparing all these kinds of mana keneged mana, a portion against a portion. He says, the Mishnah Bechor says, even though you're not allowed to weigh Bechor meat, but you are allowed to do a portion against a portion. And the Gemara thinks, Rav Yosef said, that there's a Mishnah, this Mishnah, like Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua by us is talking about weighing meat on Yantif, the Isra of Uvdu D'chol, that you're not allowed to weigh on Yantif. But he says that a portion against a portion you are allowed to do. And the Bechor, what does it talk about? About the Isra of selling Bechor in the market and weighing it, because there's a bizoin to kachim, and over there it says a portion against a portion is mutter. So the Gemara of Yosef compared them and said, since you find in Bechoros that you're allowed to weigh a portion against a portion, so too on a Yantif, you're also allowed to weigh a portion against a portion. Amalei Abaye said, no, it's not comparable, two different issues. But the Malohi, maybe it's not a good comparison. I come to come Rabbi Shua, it's two different issues altogether. The issue of Bechor is the issue of bizoin kachim. The issue of Yantif is because of the D'chol. So who says that they're comparable? Maybe the two issues are not comparable at all. And even though you find somebody that holds that it's mutter by bizoim kachim, it doesn't mean necessarily that it's mutter by of the D'chol. That's the Gemara Amalei Abaye, but in Malohi, maybe it's not comparable. Adkan lo kam Rabbi Yeshua hacha ela deleka b'zayin kachim. Over here by Yantif, it's because it's not a b'zayin. So it's just the question of to the chol. So he says it's not up to the chol. Avalah some dika b'zayin the kachim. No, maybe by Bechor is not going to be matir. And the opposite also. You don't see that the Mishnah of Bechor says it's going to be matir by Yantif. Adkan lo kam Rabbanan hasam ela mishum de lo mechzikov to the chol. The reason why it's mutter by Bechor is because there's no issue over the chol over there. Rashi even says that it's not over the chol because the chol might only be when you measure when you don't want to divide something, then it's the regular way to do a portion against a portion. But over there, by before you're selling it, when you're selling it, so you have to know how much it weighs. And as we said, you take a piece of meat, which you know already how much it weighs. And over there, putting it against the bechor is the issue of just knowing how much it weighs. So it's a different issue altogether. The mercy cooked in the chol though. Here, the issue is about if it looks like a weekday thing to divide something equally. As Rashi says, that's the normal way to divide something. You put both pieces on the scale till it balances out. So it's not a comparison. So what happened so far? Rabbi Shimon bar Rebbe and Rabbi Yehuda and Yontif by putting the two portions on the scale till it was balanced out. And they found Rabbi Shua that says so. We found the Bryce Rabbi Shua says you're allowed to do that against our Mishnah. And they wanted to pass like Rabbi Yosef Shua against our Mishnah. Rabbi Yosef thought that as a right from the din by Bechoros that says even though you're not allowed to sell Bechor by weight, you can't sell the meat by weighing it, but you are allowed to do a portion against a portion. And he thought that it's comparable, but Abai said it's not comparable. Two different issues. One is about the Zayin Kachim, one is about Uvda the Chol. You can't bring the right one to the other. And that's the end of the Gemara, really. And it comes out in the halacha, we don't paskin like Rabbi Yeshua. We don't paskin like this. We paskin like our Mishnah, like the Rabbanan. It's not a right, as Abaye said, it's not a right from the case of Bechor, and therefore you're not allowed to do anyantiv a portion against a portion. We don't paskin like Rabbi Shimon Berebi and like Rabbi Chia and like Rabbi Yeshua. We paskin like the Rabbanan of our Mishnah. In Mashgichin the Kappas Dayan Kaluki, you don't use the scale at all. So you're not allowed to do it. You're not allowed to do it. You can't do a portion against a portion either. Even though you're just doing it to divide, you're not doing it to weigh. You don't know the weight. It's still called the Uvda the Chol. You're not allowed to do it. The Gemara at the end just ends up with the story, the kash on the story. What do we say? Rav Shimon and Rebbe and Rav Chia, when they divided, they were very medactic to make sure that they divided it equally. And the Gemara says that they had a relationship that they wouldn't be so medactic that it was exactly even. So the story doesn't make sense. The name of the Kapti, they were makbid when they divided something that it should be exactly equal. There were 7 fish. The word Benisa means fish. 7 fish came to the house of Rebbe, and both his son, Reb Shimon bar Rebbe, and Reb Chia, who was his Talmud, they would get supported from the house of Rebbe, means that their food came from there. And 5 out of the 7 fish ended up by Reb Chia, and Reb Shimon bar Rebbe only got 2. And Reb Shimon Rebbe had no problem with that. It means that when they were large with each other, they didn't care if you divided 7 to become 5 and 2, not 3.5, 3.5. So they didn't care. So the story here is very strange that Reb Shimon Rebbe and Reb Chia, they would go on the scale on Yontif to make sure that they divided exactly even. That's not normal for them. So the Gemara says, you're right, the story is a little bit different. One of the names got mixed up. It wouldn't be Reb Shimon Rebbe together with Reb Chia. There's another person over there. If it was Reb Chia, then it wasn't Reb Shimon Rebbe. Then it was Reb Shmuel Reb Yossi. Reb Chia and Reb Shmuel Reb Yossi, they had a regular relationship. And when they would buy something with shufas, they would divide it equally. You do it on the scale. Or if it was Reb Shimon Rebbe, then it wasn't Reb Chia, then it was Bar Kapara. But if it would have been Reb Chia and Reb Shimon Rebbe, they had a very close relationship, and they wouldn't have put it on the scale in order to measure, in order to weigh exactly. That's only people that are regular, the regular relationship. You bought something with shufas, so you divided by the scale. But they had a different kind of relationship. So that's the end of that. So you're all about the
Rebbe,
yes, please.
The Gemara, the Hezbollah Rashi seems complex, but if I read it correctly, it sounds like we got out of Bizayon Kachim, but we can't get out of Uvda Dachol, and therefore, because of Uvda Dachol, it's not going to be mutter. Is that correct?
Gemara says there are 2 subjects. One is our subject is all about Uvda Dachol. The subject of, there's no Bizayon Kachim here. We're not talking about Kachim. Our subject is talking about Yantif. If you want to divide Uvda Dachol, the whole issue we're talking about is Uvda Dachol. The Gemara wanted to compare it to the din of Bechor. That has nothing to do with us, nothing to do with Yantiv. It has to do with Bechor, that you're not allowed to sell a Bechor by weight. And over there it says you're allowed to do a portion against a portion. So the Gemara says two different subjects. One is Bizayon Kachim, and it might not be Bizayon Kachim, or might yes be, might not be. That's one subject. And our subject is about Uvda Dachol. If it's considered Uvda Dachol, if you do it a portion against a portion, and you can't bring a proof from one subject to the other. And therefore the Gemara rejects the proof from Bechor that over there you're allowed to do a portion against a portion. That's not a proof to our subject of Yantiv, that you should be allowed to do it on Yantiv because of Uvda Dachol. And therefore, we don't pass like Rabbi Yeshua. It's true, Rabbi Yeshua says so, even on Yantiv, Rabbi Shimon bar Rebbe, Rabbi Chia, all these people, they say even on Yantiv you're allowed to do a portion against a portion, but we don't pass like them. And even though by Yantiv we might hold that you may, on Yantiv, and I'm sorry, by Bechor, you may sell Bechor by weight, by putting a portion against a portion, but that doesn't mean that by Yantiv you're allowed to do it. Like nothing to do with each other. 2 subjects have nothing to do with each other. That's how Rashi seems to explain. So that's the end of the subject about weighing. Why do we pass like Rabbanan? Most chumrah, you're not allowed to weigh at all. You can't do meat against meat. You can't. We said a bunch of Gemaras. You're not allowed to do even by hand. If you're an expert to be able to estimate by hand, you can't do a water scale. And what else do we say? You're not allowed to even put the meat on the scale in order to protect it from the mice. Don't use a scale at all. And we came out against this last sugya. We don't do mana connected mana. We don't even do a portion against a portion.
Yeah, one more question, Rabbi, and that is that, this is such a subjective thing in a sense. We're talking about not using an objective means to evaluate, but yet when it comes down to it, when everybody's in the kitchen and when they're figuring stuff out, we're always kind of making a subjective cheshbon, just like kids always say, your piece is bigger than mine. How do we look at that on Yom Tov and Shabbos in terms of what we're doing and how to manage it?
No, here it just talks about weighing. You're talking about how you're allowed to divide without weighing. You're allowed to make that's the issue when Masechah Shabbos talks about making a goal over there. Lochshin, if you're allowed to make a goal, which you want to divide pieces, Lochshin ala monos over there, something like that. That's an issue in Masechah Shabbos about making hagrala. But here we're talking about scales. The issue here is only on scale. Shabbos show you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to measure on Shabbos. No scales on Shabbos. And the other issue is about Yantif was it more lenient. I'm allowed to do it as Shinoi, and it comes out that Yantif balls or not. Did that answer the question?
I think it did. It's just like I'm always wondering about this shaila when I'm put in the position, because it's just a atiya the way our head is, that we're always kind of doing what little kids do. We are doing that.
Here the issue is only a scale. The issue in our Gemara is just a scale. And we don't even have scales in our kitchen. If anything, we have electric scales usually. That surely is not going to be used on Yantif. So the issue here is using a scale. That's the whole sugya. If you want to use the sugya, look at the sugya about dividing portions and then seeing which one is bigger. Are they equal? That's the Gemara Masechah Shabbos talks about making a gorel and dividing it amongst the kids and stuff like that. And there says that a father is allowed to do it with his children, I think, and not if it's strangers. I think that's the sugya over there. But in our sugya, it just talks about a scale. We're limited to the issue of a scale over here. Next sugya. Now talking about sharpening the knife. I don't know if it's talking about a shechita knife. I think it's talking about the butchering knife, the cleaver. So it says you're not allowed to sharpen the knife on Yom Tov, but you may sharpen a knife against the knife. Masiyah al-gabi chavata. Rashi doesn't translate the word masiyah, but it means like to rub one against the other. So that's not the regular way to sharpen a knife against a knife. So that you are allowed to do. And just to give a akdama, eventually this sugya is going to come into the sugya of machshir yochel nefesh, which we talk about. We touched on it a little bit on the Chav Beis. Machshir yochel nefesh means not the actual preparing the food, but a step before. Like here, it's going to be preparing the knife. Not that the knife is going to be doing something like shechita or something like that, but it's a step before, preparing the knife. So are you allowed to prepare the knife, fix the knife on Yom Tov? So the Mishnah says no, you're not allowed to, but a shinui is okay. So to sharpen the knife in the regular way, like a mashchezes, some kind of knife sharpener. The Gemara talks about made out of stone, made out of wood.
It's a professional piece, probably that's why it's against.
Right. So if nowadays we're familiar with that the Shoftim have it. The Shoftim have a stone that they want to sharpen the knife. They rub it against the stone. It's a big umnus to be able to get the knife completely sharp without any nick. So they use it. There's a professional stone. They have other things that they have nowadays also. Contraptions that make it very, very, very sharp. So here the Muslim talk about it made out of stone, made out of wood. So it says you're not allowed to use mashchezes. So far we'll see the words of the Mishnah, and the Gemara will elaborate. So it says you're not allowed to use sharpen a knife on Yom Tov, but you could rub a knife against the knife in order to sharpen it, not the regular way. Rashi seems to say the issue is uvda the chol. You might say a little bit more than Rashi, that maybe it's worse than uvda the chol, maybe it's tikkun mana, maybe it's considered fixing something. But Rashi just says uvda the chol, we'll go with Rashi. The Gemara says, Amar Avuna. It's only us if it's stone, a stone sharpener made out of stone, but if it's made out of wood, then it's okay. It seems a kind of a shina. It's not the regular way to do it. Maybe it is called a mashchezes. It seems that you get it in the store, such a kind of a thing, but it's not as good as the stone one. It's not the regular way to do it, so therefore it's mutter. So it's a little strange that Shmuel is explaining Rav Huna. I think usually you don't have that, but that's what comes out. According to our Girsa, Shmuel is explaining Rav Huna. He agrees to the difference of Rav Huna between stone and wood, but he says that it's only usher if it's two things going against you. It means we'll call that tarti l'reisa, two things that are bad. One is that it's a stone, and also you're doing it in order to sharpen the knife. But if you're only doing it lahaver shamnu nisa, that it has grease, fat on the knife, and you want to rub it not to sharpen the knife, but just to get off the grease, so then it's mutter.
Even on stone?
Even on stone. Machlal, the bishal eitz, afilu lachad v'nami mutter. And we could deduce from that when he said that stone is mutter, even if you're doing it to sharpen. It means it's only us if you have tati l'reisa, that it's stone and sharpening the knife. But if either one of those ingredients are missing, either it's you're not doing it on stone, even though you're doing it to sharpen, or you're not doing it to sharpen, you're only getting the fat off, even though you're doing it on stone is mutter. It's only us if you have both problems, that you're doing it on stone to sharpen. Ika, the Masni La Sefer. Some have Shmuel talking on Rav Huna, on the Sefer of Rav Huna. This is going to be Machmir. The Shalait's mutter. That Rav Huna said that if it's made out of wood, the mashchezes is made out of wood, then it's mutter. On that, I'm going to read Shmuel. Ahmed Shalait's mutter. Here goes the opposite. Here goes Tati Letivusa. You have to have two things going for you in order to be mutter. This is a chumrah. That if you have both its wood and also you're doing it only to get the grease off, then it's mutter. But if you have either one, then it's a problem. If it's going to be made out of stone, if you have either one of these problems, either you're doing it to sharpen, even on wood, or you're doing it on stone, even though you're doing it to take off the fat, then it's asa. So we have Rav Huna and Shmuel, everyone's in agreement with each other, not arguing on each other. But the question is what the Girsa is. The first version is lenient, that it's only us if you have two problems, you're doing on stone to sharpen. And the second version is machmir, that it's only mutter if you're doing it on wood in order to remove the fat. So two Lashonos, it comes down to Chokes Rishonim, where you pass them like the Rosh is Mako, the Rambam is machmir, we're machmir. The Halach is machmir like the Rambam, like the second Lashon, that it's only mutter if you have two things going for you, that it's only on wood and it's not doing it in order to sharpen it. But either one alone will be awesome.
How wood works to sharpen a knife, it doesn't sound very practical.
I guess you could. I think the barbers in the old days, I don't know about today, the barbers used to have a leather belt kind of thing, a leather strap, and they would sharpen the knife on the leather. So I guess you could do it on wood also. It's not as good as stone, but it's also possible. So that's what the Gemara says. So far, was talked about Rav Huna's din about mashchezes shalaitz, and it comes out just halacha l'maisa. It comes out that it's only mutter on mashchezes shalaitz together with the fact that you're doing it only to get off the grease, but if you're doing it to sharpen, it's also even on a mashchezes shalaitz. Halachically. Now the Gemara goes a whole different version, which is very, very similar to what we just learned, but instead that's just a little preview. Instead of talking about a mashchezes shalaitz, that's going to be the case. That's not mamish the regular way of doing it. We're going to talk about our Mishnah that spoke about lasiya gabi chavita, to do a knife against a knife, to sharpen a knife against a knife, to sharpen whatever, or to clean, as we'll say shamnunis. So the Mishnah also said a heter, just like the Rav Huna said a heter about mashchezes shalaitz. The Mishnah itself says a heter if you're doing it a knife against a knife. So that's what the Gemara is going to talk about now.
Where are you starting?
Ika de masni lamas nisan.
What is this? Is it Brisa or is it just
This is Shmuel talking, and instead of the first lashon that Shmuel is going on Rav Huna and the din about mashchezes shalaitz, now he's going to be talking about the Mishnah. So Ika de masni lamas nisan. Some have the whole version of Yudam Shmuel talking not on Rav Huna but talking on the Mishnah. What does it say? Ein mashchizin es sakam yamtiv. You're not allowed to sharpen a knife on yantif. On this, it's only us to sharpen a knife if you're doing it in order to sharpen. But if you're doing it in order to get the grease off the knife, then it's mutter. Even in the ratio where it's talking about an even, it's talking about a regular mashchezes. But that's the evidence as a mashchezes and the sharpener. But the end of the Mishnah says that you're allowed to put a knife against a knife. If you're doing a knife against a knife, you're not even sharp, even if your purpose is to sharpen it. So this is the Pashut in the Mishnah that and it comes out that it's leniency, that it's only us if you have two things, Tati l'reisa we'll call it. One is that you're doing it with mashchezes and you're doing it to sharpen it. But if you have anything that's missing, any one of these two ingredients is missing, only chadal l'reisa, then it's okay. It means if you're doing it agabi chavita, you're doing a knife against a knife, even though you're doing it to sharpen it, or you're doing it on a regular mashchezes, but you're doing it in order to get off the grease, then they get it will be mutter. And on this version also, we have a different ikid masnila that they come to be machmir. Some say Yehuda Mishmor is going on a safe of our Mishnah. What is saying in our Mishnah? That you're allowed to do a knife against a knife. What is that talking about? That only if you have tatim v'tivusa, only if you have two things going for you. You're doing a knife against a knife, not to sharpen it. You're doing a knife against a knife in order to get off the grease. Tatim v'tivusa, then we'll make it. If you're sharpening it even against a knife, you want to sharpen a knife against a knife also, it's going to be asa. According to this girsa, so then the ratio which says you're not allowed to use a mashchez as a sharpener, even if you're doing it, they'll have Risham Nunis. Again, according to the first lashon in this second lesson, is Shmuel coming to Shmuel's going to the Mishnah? Is he coming to be Mekel or coming to be Machmir? According to the first side, he's coming to be Mekel. It's only us if you have two things going against you, that it's a Mashchezes, and you're doing it to sharpen. But if either one of those things are missing, it's Mutter. According to the second version of Shmuel, then it would come out that only the Chumrah, that only if you have two things going for you, that you're only doing it against the knife, a knife against the knife, and also only to get off the grease. And again, that's how he passed. Machalkes is again Russian, the Rambam. What do you pass on like? We're going to Rambam. That's Machmir, second Russian, and it's only with the Tatu the Tibusa. So if you put both of these Gemaras together, either what? I'm using my own. It's an expression. Two things going good for you, two things bad for you. Two Tatu the Tibusa, Tatu the Reisa, Ra Tov, good and bad. So it comes out that only lenient if you have two things that are lenient, two leniencies. First of all, you're not doing it for the purpose of sharpening. According to what we paskin, if you're doing it to sharpen the sus in any case, and even if you're doing it to get off the grease, it's only mutter. It's not the regular way, not on a mashchezah shaleven. But if you're doing it on eights, or you're doing it a knife against the knife, then it's mutter since you're doing it only to get off the grease.
That should be quite strong.
What's that? Okay. Basil Yochan. Yeah. But it says that you're not allowed to do it. It seems not the regular way. It seems, but and it's only mutter if you're doing it in order. It's only mutter if you're doing it in order to get the grease off, not in order to sharpen. Okay, we had two lashonos in these two aterim, and it comes out either eights, either made out of wood, mashchas is made out of wood, which is not the regular way, or you're doing a knife against a knife. If also your kavanah is not to sharpen it, just get off the grease, then it's mutter. The Gemara starts a new sugya, which is a very important sugya now, and not only in this halacha, but in general. Man tana hilchos yantif. Our whole Mishnah, it says that you're not allowed to sharpen a knife, is against Rav Chisda. I'm sorry, Chisda says it's against Rav Yehuda. Which Rav Yehuda? This is the famous Rav Yehuda by Machshiv Yochel Nefesh. The Tanya, and Yontif the Shabbos Yochel Nefesh. The only difference between Yontif and Shabbos is Yochel Nefesh, and Shabbos you're not allowed to do malacha even for food. And Yontif you're allowed to do malacha for food. Rav Yehuda Machshiv Yochel Nefesh. Not only the food, even the preparation for food. Like here, to sharpen a knife. The knife is not the food, but the knife is going to be able to help to get the food. That's called Machshir Yochel Nefesh. It's the preparation for the food. So you're allowed to even do that. So since the point of view that you're allowed to do malacha for Machshir Yochel Nefesh, you'd be allowed to sharpen the knife. So even though until now we spoke about that you're not doing it to sharpen the knife, you're just doing it to get off the grease, and it has to be with a shino, eights, masiyal gabechavata. Now it comes out this whole is only everything we said is aser is only according to the Rabbanan who hold that there's no heter of Machshir Yochel Nefesh. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, Machshir Yochel Nefesh is mutter also. You'd be allowed to sharpen the knife because Machshir Yochel Nefesh is mutter. We have to finish the sugya today. We'll get there to see that Rabbi Yehuda also has restrictions. It's only if something was not able to do before Yontif. But if you're able to do it before Yontif, he's not going to be matir. Here the case was that you didn't know that the knife needed sharpening. That's why he says that the point of view there'd be a lot of sharpen the knife on Yontif. And this is going to have a lot of ramifications. We saw over there spoke about many cases of kibui, of extinguishing. Over there the Gemara said that the Yehuda hold that it's mutter, the Gemara hold that it's aser, and there was a sugi how you pass them like Ayin Sham. The Gemara over there didn't even mention the whole brisa we have over there, just like Rabbi Yehuda. And Rashi said you're supposed to know that Rabbi Yehuda and Daf Chav Ches and the brisa is going to say Machshir Yochel Nefesh is mutter. So here we have arrived that this is the brisa of Machshir Yochel Nefesh. Amalei Rav Amalei. 3 lines from the bottom. Amalei Rav Rav Chisda Tashin Mishmach Allah Rav Yehuda. Shall we announce in your name that Allah is like Rav Yehuda? From the way Rav Chisda presented it, that our Mishnah is against Rav Yehuda, it sounds like he passed like Rav Yehuda. So should we say in your name that Allah is like Rav Yehuda? He said, yeah, Halabai. Amalei Yeivava Dechol Kihani Milim Ma'alisa Tidrishon Mishmoi Yivatzon Shekol Ke Elu Advor Matovim Tidrishon Mishmi. Alavai, he wrote something like it should be the will of Hashem that he should say such good things in my name. That yeah, it's a great thing to say. Yes, I do pass like Rav Yehuda. He passed like so it's a big thing over here. He's passed like Rav Yehuda against the Rabbanan, against our Mishnah, and Machshir Yochel Nefesh is mutter on Shabbos. On Yontif, Machshir Yochel Nefesh is mutter not only preparing for the food, even a step before preparing the preparation, doing malacha to prepare the knife is also going to be mutter. The Gemara continues. The Gemara is going to get back to this again in Amud Beis about the drush, where you get it from. But so far, the Gemara says that if the passes like Rav Yehuda, Machshir Yochel Nefesh is mutter on Yontif. Bottom line.
All the sharpening, and the chumras and the sharpening is
right. According to what he said, everything's mutter. Only the things about you're right that the whole Gemara spoke about. You're doing it for getting off the grease, doing it with a shino. Right, according to that view, everything is mutter. But we'll see one. Now we'll see a
We can't hear you.
The same page that goes to something well, but it's a different page.
We lost you for a few minutes. We lost you for about 2 minutes there, or about a minute.
So what
Six-
should how many minutes? What should I go back to?
About 30 seconds.
30 seconds. That the last Gemara was that Rav Chisda paskin like Rav Yehuda and Machshir Nefesh is mutter. And now the bottom line says that Chaim David pointed out that the whole Gemara we had till now that spoke about sharpening the knife to do in order to it is usher, and if they're doing it to get off the grease, and you're doing it with a shino, according to Rav Chisda, that's all Rabbanan. But Rav Chisda, but Rav Yehuda, that he passes like, holds you a lot of sharpening a knife in Yantif, because Machshir Nefesh is mutter. And we have to hold on, that's what it says so far. But now we'll go to the next Gemara. The bottom line says, Nechemia, the son of Rav Yosef, says, I was standing in front of Rava, and he was, once again, he was passing the knife over the rim of a basket, which means that he was sort of rubbing it against the basket. And he asked him, why are you doing that? I said to him, are you doing it to sharpen to get the grease off? He said, I'm doing it in order to get off the grease. But Rav Nechemia Beit Rav Yosef says, I saw that wasn't really, he was lying to me. He really did it because he wanted to sharpen the knife. But I could tell that he really was doing it in order to sharpen it. But he didn't want to tell me. Why? Because he says, he holds that Allah is so, but you don't paskin so. You don't paskin in public. So Rashi says, and Rashi Tosfos, they say that this means that even though he passed like Rabbi Yehuda, really, that really he holds you allowed to sharpen the knife, because even though we said till now that you're not allowed to sharpen the knife, that's only the Rabbana, but Rabbi Yehuda holds you are allowed to. And he really was doing it because he passed like Rabbi Yehuda. Like saying,
It's only a derkuda. What is it? That's a basket.
he calls it a basket, yeah, he calls it a wooden basket. But so the Gemara said before that even to do it on wood, if you're doing it to sharpen, you're not allowed to, according to Rabbana, at least according to one lashon at least. You're right. It is dependent on the two lashonos. But let's go simple, like Rashi, that if you're doing it according to Rabbanan, you wouldn't be allowed to do it. According to the Chumrah before, it has to be dafka if you're doing it to get off the shamnunis. So he said, he made like I'm doing innocently. I'm doing it just to get off the grease, and it's wood, everything's fine. But I saw it. He was doing it to sharpen. He want to tell me. Why didn't he want to tell me? Because Allah can you allowed to do like that? That's the halacha, but don't publicize it. So if you tell me, if you're publicizing it, he's allowed to do it. If I know that Allah, I'm also allowed to do it, but he's not allowed to publicize it. So that's where we come out. Allah can be passing like Rabbi Yehuda, that Machshir Nefesh is mutter and yantif, but don't announce it. So
again,
I saw that his intention was really right, but he didn't want to tell me. He told me I'm doing it. I'm only doing it in order to get off the grease. But I saw that really he was doing it in order to sharpen it. But he didn't want to tell me. Why not? Because halacha came. That's the halacha, but don't publicize it. So he was doing it, but then he didn't know that I was looking. But then when he saw me, he said, "No, I'm just doing it in order to get off the grease." Really, he was doing it in order to sharpen it, and that comes out that Allah's like Rabbi Yehuda Machshir Nefesh is mutter, but don't publicize it.
If I'm seeing a little bit here and there that there's the places where the chachamim.
Yeah, you're allowed to lie. You're allowed to, you're allowed to
override.
Yeah, sometimes you're allowed to lie. Sometimes you're here in order not to make people
not to make it
a mixture, that they shouldn't come out and make a mistake. Rashi says that mixture might be, that we're going to see soon, that even Rabbi Yehuda only permits Machshir Nefesh if you couldn't have done it before Yom Tov. But if you could have, so then it's going to be Yasser. Only Machshir Nefesh she'iyah shel asos me'ev Yom Tov. But if you could have done it before, then you shouldn't. So even Rabbi Yehuda, and that's going to be more coming up soon. So Rashi says that's the reason why they want to publicize it, because there's room for mistake. Okay, another similar story. Vamar Abaye. The first one on the line is Cain. Vamar Abaye. The similar story. I was sitting in front of Mar. When Rabbi says Mar means Rabba, the master. Rabba was his Rebbe. He was passing the knife over the rim of a mill. This seems to be wood. Stone. A stone mill. And it wasn't a mashchezes. It wasn't mamash sharpener, but it was stone. And also he was passing the knife over the stone, and I asked him, what are you doing it for? Are you doing it in order to sharpen the knife? Are you doing it to get off the grease? He told me he's only doing it to get off the grease, but I saw that wasn't really true. I saw that he's really doing it in order to sharpen it. And how come he didn't tell me? Also, because he holds, that's the halacha, like Rabbi Yehuda, that you're allowed to sharpen a knife even on stone, for the purpose, really, all the way, even with stone and even for sharpening, and because Rabbi Yehuda holds my Machshir Nefesh is mutter. But Ein Morin came, so he couldn't pass him. He didn't want to tell me. even though I'm his Talmud. He didn't tell me. So that's the Gemara that we pass like Rabbi Yehuda, it seems, but ain't more king. You don't publicize it.
The Rechia is the milk.
Rechai is the man.
Rechai.
Rechai, yeah. New Gemara, we're going to come back soon, back to the issue about sharpening knives, but and Rabbi Yehuda, everything all about that. We'll come back to it soon, but a little bit of hafsak over here.
Rebbe, what I understand here is that the whole diyun in Rishonim is we're talking about Shirei Ochel Nefesh. So the question is, at what stage does it actually become that it's nicker, that it's for preparing the food, and you couldn't have really done it earlier, or it would have been mekalkil, as opposed to an earlier stage, which like the Meiri calls avodas hasadeh, which for sure is after.
I think you're talking about two things. One point, he's talking about if it's nicker, I'm not sure if it's nicker or not. One is what's called machshirin, and that we're matir. But even for ochel nefesh also, there's a limit. We're not matir all ochel nefesh. What means you could have done it before? The Gemara is going to soon say, we didn't get to it yet, that even machshir ochel nefesh is only mutter if you could not have done it before. That's one subject. And Rashi, throughout the Masechta, goes that even ochel nefesh also is only mutter according to Rabbanan of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda himself will be matir ochel nefesh even if you could have done it before. But Rabbanan that aser machshir ochel nefesh, so even ochel nefesh is only matir if you could not have done it earlier.
The Rambam seems to have a kivun that he's more worried about a gezerah that we're going to make chol out of Yom Tov.
Before you get to that, the general issue you need in Hilchas Yom Tov is that it's confusing. How come some halachas are mutter, some halachas are aser? Even ochel nefesh. Here we're going more adin. Here we're going already machshir ochel nefesh. But even ochel nefesh also, there's a big subject that has to be explained. How come some is mutter, some is aser? Well, what's the dividing line? Because you have many mishnayos. You don't just say ochel nefesh is mutter. The whole Masechtas Beitza could have been condensed half the size and say anything for ochel nefesh is mutter. But it's not true. We see many malachas that are aser. We had sugyas upon sugyas that some things are aser even for ochel nefesh. So that's the question we should deal with. Why are we not matir all ochel nefesh? And also by machshir ochel nefesh. Even if we do machshir ochel nefesh, is everything mutter, or there's also some limit? There's a red line that even that's also aser. If even ochel nefesh also is aser sometimes. So like everybody holds you're not allowed to harvest. You're not allowed to go to the field and pick out a cucumber off the ground. Everyone knows that's aser, even though ochel nefesh mamish. So that's what the Rishonim are dealing with. What's the koveya? What's the demarcation? Some say if you could have done it earlier. Rashi goes the whole sugya. The whole Masechta, if you could have done it earlier. Another Rishonim argues, say no, it's not true. That ochel nefesh is mutter even if you could have done it earlier before Yom Tov. And they say that maybe the Agdar would be things that are usually, like you said, it's avodat hasadeh, not avodat hamidbach. Yeah, things that are done in the kitchen, that's called ochel nefesh. But things that are done in the field, like on a big level, on an industrial level, not that you do like on a company level, not that you're doing in the house. So that's how some Rishonim explain.
So the cooler would be in the house. So,
yeah, and things that are in the house, but things that are done a long term, big scale things that are not matir. But the question you brought up is a very general question on the whole Masechta that even not only machshir ochel nefesh, even ochel nefesh. When do we say that it's aser even though it's ochel nefesh? And they're going to say the things that are done long term, or looks like things that are done on a factory level, the industrial level, that's aser, or maybe other Rishonim also. But that's a general question on the whole Masechta, not after over here. How come there's a red line sometimes, even there's a heter of ochel nefesh, still we don't permit everything. Okay, the Gemara continues. Are you allowed to show the knife to the chacham on Yom Tov? That the chacham, he's going to say it's a related sugya, not I'm sugya about sharpening, but a related sugya that the chacham is supposed to pass it if it's a kosher knife. So really, you don't. Why should you need a chacham for? Anybody that knows, he should learn the halachas and he should he should know the shochet should know if it's a sharp knife. So they made a takanat in order to quote a chacham. They have to go to the chacham to show him if it's a kosher knife. But this is only when you're doing it for the public. When you're selling meat to the public, then you have to show the chacham ha'ir, the rav. You have to show him if it's he has to give the okay that it's a good knife. The question is how to do it. Nowadays, they don't go to the rav every day. They go once a year or something, whatever the case would be, how they do it nowadays. But you're supposed to show the stock into the chacham. So the question is, on Yom Tov, Rashi says, since you only show it to the rav when you're doing it for others, when you do it for your own, you're shechting your own in the chicken in the house or a goat, you don't have to show it to the chacham.
Because you don't have to have it. It doesn't have to be sharp.
No, of course it has to be sharp. It has to be a kosher knife.
Oh, we're talking about
A shechita knife. A shechita knife has to be no nick. Has to have, if it's a trade for a nevela. So it's true that you have to show, you have to know that's a kosher knife, but you don't have to go to the chacham. You can know yourself. If you know that it's a kosher knife, it's a kosher knife. You learn the halachas, you know. But they made a special takana that when you're doing for other people, the tabach, the butcher, the shochet of the city, he's doing it for other people to sell. So then he has to show it to the chacham. So by going to the chacham and yantif, it shows like he's doing it for the public. He's going to shech for the public. So maybe it's avsham milsa, maybe it's too over the whole. The fact that he checked for everybody. That's the question. Are you allowed to show the knife to the chacham and yantif? This person, Rav Mari Ben Rabbi, was as permissible. That's not included into the whole. But there's a way to do it even if that it's usher. If Yosef Omar, Talmud Chacham, the Talmud Chacham, the Rav, he's like, not only the Rav, any Talmud Chacham is allowed to see his own knife. He's allowed to look at his own knife for his own shechita, not for somebody else. But he could lend his knife to other people. He can't check other people's knives, even if we said that Rabbanan say it's usher. But even though it's usher, but there's a patent that the Rav could check for himself, and then he could lend it to other people. It means when the butcher comes to the Rav to check his knife, he says, "I can't check your knife, but I'll give you my knife." That you're allowed to do. So that's the end of the sugya about checking knives. That comes out with paskin that you're not supposed to go to the Rav to check the knife because it looks like you're doing it for the public, but he can give you his own knife. Rav Yosef. Back to the subject about sharpening knives. Second, Shamda with the Lachad Davyamta. Immediately, the Pascha Agav Ducha. A knife that's stopped. Now, the Rashi doesn't mean that it got dull. There are a few ways that a knife can get not usable. It gets a nick. Amda means that it's got dull. It got dull. That it doesn't work so well anymore. It got dull. The sharpness of the blade got dull. So you're allowed to sharpen it. So we have to figure out how to fix with the whole sugi before. I'm not sure. I'm going to say something. I'm not sure if that's what everybody says, but let's go according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda said that you're allowed to sharpen a knife because machshir yochel nefesh is mutter. But here it says here too you're allowed to sharpen a dull knife. And immediately the pasuk agav ducha. Only if it could use it's usable. If you press hard, it is going to work. Of course, not talking about shchita now because you can't press by shchita. That's called drasa. That wouldn't be a good shchita. But the point is a knife that using for butchering. So if it's usable, midochak, it's usable, you're allowed to fix it up. As long as it cuts when you press. Yeah, a pasuk is the cut, and a duchka is by pressing. If you use it, means it's usable. It's usable. The pressure, so it's usable, even though it's dull and it's hard to use. But if it's usable midochak, so then you're allowed to sharpen it. Maybe this is going. I'm not sure. I'm just saying a possibility. It's going according to Yehuda that says that you're allowed to do machshir yochel nefesh. Rashi just says that if it's so dull that you can't. Rashi also says you didn't have to expect that's going to happen before. Rashi talks about it in Yehuda. We're coming up that sometimes if it let's say you had a nick before Yantif, so you should have fixed it before Yantif. There's not going to be matir. The Mishnah that says that that the Gemara says according to Yehuda, you're allowed to sharpen a knife. It's only if it happened on Yantif that you weren't able to know before Yantif that it had to be sharpened. Or Rashi says a dull knife that it constantly gets rubbed out, and there's no exact time to say it has to be fixed now. Before Yantif, you looked at the knife, it looked okay. I didn't know that it's going to get so dull. That's called something which is unexpected. That you be matir. But if it's so dull that it's not usable, then the Rashi says it's a tircha yisera. It's too much work. And that's why it's us.
You actually making them.
So Rashi doesn't say that's a problem. Rashi says the problem is only because it's a tircha yisera. It's too much work. It's too much work to get a dull knife that's not working at all. Rashi doesn't say it's for taking money. He says tircha yisera. So I'm not sure if that's how the Mepharshim are going to explain, but if I do suggest, maybe Machabu says that maybe I didn't look into the poskim, that's going to contact Yehuda, that you are allowed to do machshir yochel nefesh, but only if it was unexpected and only if it's not too much tircha. The Gemara continues. Darash, the Gemara is now going to get mamish into the meat of the sugya of Rav Yehuda and the Rabbana, that machshir yochel nefesh is mutter. Darash Rav Chisda is one of the pasuk on Avanal like Rav Yehuda. He's very proud of the psak. He said, Halavai Shadash, and all kinds of things in my name. A pasuk like a Yehuda. I'm sorry.
The peers or the
Who? We don't have. We have no. Rav Chisda doesn't have more. Yehuda is the Tana. What do you mean?
Oh, like Rebbe.
Rav Chisda. B'tayim Rav Yosef. Echad sakin shenivgimov. Echad shput shenirtza. Ve'echad b'yefes tana b'kivayim. B'yom tov. These three cases are going to be a machlokes of Yehuda Rabbana. Which of Yehuda? We're going to say right away the Yehuda of machshir yochel nefesh, which we just had on Amar Aleph. So there are three cases over here. The contract Rabbana is going to be Yasser because it's only machshir yochel nefesh, and the contract Yehuda is mutter because he holds machshir yochel nefesh is mutter. What's the first case? Second shenif guma, a knife which got a nick on Yantif. You weren't able to fix it before Yantif because it only got broken on Yantif. Or shput shenirtzam. A shput is a spit. It has to have a point in order to get the meat, whatever you want to put on the barbecue. You have to have a point. And they got the the point broke off on Yontif, or Mifastana B'Kirayim. Rashi says that sometimes in the oven, the tiach, how do you say tiach? The plaster falls into the oven, and you have to clean it out in order to be able to bake in it. And it happened on Yontif. All these things happened on Yontif. Abiyuda Abana would argue because according to Abana, it's only machshir yochel nefesh. It's not the actual yochel nefesh. It's just preparing the knife, preparing the spit, preparing the oven. That's asa. But according to Abiyuda, machshir yochel nefesh is mutter. And once again, it brings this brisa of machshir yochel nefesh. Tanya ein bein Yontif l'Shabbos al yochel nefesh bovad. Tanakama says the only Yontif is yochel nefesh mamish, the food itself. But Abiyuda not the machshir yochel nefesh. Even if it's only preparing, the preparation to make the food is also mutter. And therefore, fixing the knife, fixing the spit, fixing the oven is mutter point of view. Spud. That it got the point broke off. Without the point, so you can't use it as a spit. You have to be able to pierce into the meat. My time with the Tanakhama. If for the first time the Gemara is going to open up, where they get it from? What's the drushes? My time with the Tanakhama. It says only what's going to be used for food is permissible, and only that. Only that. It's only ochel nefesh, not anything else. Even if it's for food, but it's not actually the food, it's only a step before, it's also asa. Rabbi Amar? No. Rabbi Amar kruah lachem l'chol tzachechem. That it says, the word lachem is extra. It alone can be done for you, but for you it's coming to be marba more, that whatever you need, you're allowed to do. And they say, according to this pshat, it could be that any tzarchim, not only ochel nefesh. We're going to see soon that he's going to limit it, what's limited. But lachem l'chol tzarchechem at this point says even though it's not ochel nefesh. Here the Gemara just says machshir ochel nefesh, but they talk about it in the Chav Beis. Maybe over there it's mutter. Even over there the Gemara talked about the fire, the houses are burning down, or for tashmish, or for healing one's eye. Ayin sham and the Chav Beis Rashi says maybe l'chol tzarchechem doesn't even mean ochel nefesh. But anyway, this is where the drasha of Rabbi Yehuda lachem l'chol tzarchechem. The Gemara is kash on each person. What does he do with the other drasha? Tanakama. What's Tanakama do with the word lachem? He says only ochel nefesh. He says only ochel nefesh. He doesn't hold the machshir ochel nefesh. Why does he do with the word lachem? It's coming to be marba something. He says no, it's not coming to be marba. It's coming to minimize. Who lachem below the nachem? It's coming to minimize that even ochel nefesh is only mutter for you, but you can't do ochel nefesh for goyim. And also you could throw in the more said before lachem below the nachem, lachem below the klavim, maybe lachem below the gavoa. To minimize, to be mimayid, not to be marba. Not to say whatever you want. On the contrary, even food is only mutter if it's for you. What does Abiyuda? Abiyuda says everything's mutter. What does he do? Only that, only ochel nefesh. On one hand it says who, which is coming to be mamai. On the other hand it says lachem, which is coming to be marba. Everything is mutter. What do you say? Below kasha. That even Abiyuda only permits machshirin that you couldn't have done earlier. But if you could have done it earlier, you should have done it earlier. Ochel nefesh would be matir even if you could have done it every Yom Tov. But machshir ochel nefesh is only matir if you could not have done it. Rashi says a point also that even if you technically it could have been done, but you personally were busy, you couldn't have done it. Rashi top of the page says if you were tarud, also it's called you couldn't have done it before Yom Tov. So, but here comes out that machshir ochel nefesh is matir if you could not have done it before Yom Tov. Then it's also. So back to the case of the dull knife, whatever we were talking about before, that according to everything's mutter, but now we're limited if you could not have done it before Yom Tov. If you didn't know about it or it wasn't yet broken, but if it was already every reason you should have done it before Yom Tov already, then he also would not be matter machshir ochel nefesh. The more continues, Rashi says to me that it was bent. Rashi says that not near tzam. Near tzam is that the point broke off. Near tzaf means that Rashi says it was stepped on, it got out of shape. So you're not allowed to fix it up because Rashi says it's usable as is. The spit, which got out of shape. Okay, so you have a barbecue that's a bit bent. What's the problem? It's still usable. Maybe it's not so convenient, but it's still usable. Pshita. Rashi says that I got bent. Pshita, the Gemara says without saying that why fix it? It's usable the way it is. But tzricha, even though it's possible to fix by hand, you don't need a hammer in order to fix it straighten out. You can just bend it back. Also, a sasa, since it's usable the way it is, Rashi says the problem is tircha. Don't do tircha for no reason. Even that small tircha.
Rashi carries on with the same foot.
Okay. Last Gemara about muktzah. Once you used it already, you don't need it anymore. Now it's full of greasy meat. greasy grease, not meat. Let's leave off the meat for a second. So now it's nimas and muktzah, so you're not allowed to move it. It's muktzah yantif because it's a disgusting thing that doesn't have any use anymore. You finished roasting it already, and now it has the grease on it, so it's muktzah. They changed the gears here. Here it says Rav Ada bar Rava Amar Rav Malchiyo, but they changed it, switch it around. Rav Malchiyo Amar Rav Ada bar Rava. He said, Shamto Manichto B'Keren Zavos. So Rashi says that you could put it off to the side. Rashi says Shamto, like you push it off fast. So I don't know what that means. Rashi calls it Tiltum Manatzad. I'm not sure what it means. It means not the regular way of carrying it. You can't pick it up mamish and take it away because it's muktzah. But you could, I don't know, the word Shamto means like to slip it out. But Rashi says Maher. But the other words of Rashi, I don't know. Here's Rashi. Shamto Malafanav, Maher, Bigreira. The Tiltum Manatzad. So I don't know technically how you do that. What does it mean that you don't actually carry it, but you schlep it, you drag it fast? I'm not sure.
This is the dirty spit.
Yeah, the dirty split, they're not using it anymore. It's muktzah, but in order to get it away from the main center of the meal, so you could maher, greira, tiltum manatzad, you're allowed to get rid of it. I don't know how you do that exactly.
It sounds like muktzah.
It is muktzah, but now it says the muktzah in a way that's called tiltum manatzad. Tiltum manatzad, you touch something else, so you're not touching it, you're touching something else. But Rashi doesn't say that. He says greira and maher. I don't know what those words mean. Just because you do it fast means that it's not muktzah. Like you turn off the light fast, and no such thing. So the words mean move muktzah fast. I'm not sure what it is, but it's some kind of a not normal way of moving it, and that's mutter.
It does sound like a shinu.
Okay, and that's mutter. I'm Rav Chiya Rashi. I'm Rav Huna. Only if it has the kazayis of meat, then I would say it's not muktzah at all. But he says that if it has a kazayis of meat, then you're allowed to be shomto manicha b'keren zavos. It's really not using it anymore, but it has a kazayis of meat. He has a whole new heter altogether. He says even if there's no meat, and even if not shomto, you can take regular tilto because it's dangerous. The spit is dangerous, and just like a kos b'shus rabim, a thorn in public property, you're allowed to do a shinui of carrying it less than al amos at a time. So too, you're allowed to move muktzah since it's dangerous.
This is like a thorn.
Yeah, coats.
So it could be a damaging type of
Yeah,
thing.
right. Something that's
And there might be
dangerous.
children around.
Yeah, so you're allowed to move it away. So this is the heter that you're allowed to do is rabbanan because of danger of the rabbin, and so too this shpud is dangerous to leave around. I don't know if the case is that it's hot or that it's pointy, so you're allowed to move it away. And since it's dangerous, you're allowed to pick it up and take it away. Now the Gemara, the rest of the Gemara now till the bottom of the page, till our Gemara today, it's just going to be about this word here that says Rav Malchiyo. Yeah, if you're on the screen, it says Rav Malchiyo. Yeah, he's the one who said Shamto Menich B'Keren Zavos a couple of lines ago. So the Gemara is just going to talk about if the word is Malchiyo. There's an Amor whose name was Rav Malchiyo, and an Amor whose name was Rav Malchiyo. So the Gemara is going to listening to know who's who. I'm Rav China Brady Rav Ika Shapud. That's our Gemara. Ashba case is the case of the shpud that you better use, then it's dirty, so it's nima, so it's muksa. Malchiyo said that you're allowed to move it away fast. He's the one who said that, not Rav Malchiyo, and also Shvachos. What?
Ben Ada. Malchiyo ben Ada. We said that earlier on.
No, he said Rav Malchiyo in the name of Rav Ada bar Rava. Rav Malchiyo is Rav Malchiyo.
I thought there's a lot of changes.
That's who said it in the name of who? Not that Rav Ada bar Rava said in the name of Rav Malchiyo. Rav Malchiyo said in the name of Rav Ada bar Rava. But his name is Rav Malchiyo. So he was saying that his name is Rav Malchiyo. Don't get him confused with Rav Malchiyo. If somebody has the same name with Aleph at the end, so no, this is Rav Malchiyo. And also another two Gemaras, also Shvachos and also Gumos. Rashi brings down the Gemaras, whoever wants to see can see Rashi to see what they're referring to. These three halachos were said in the name of Rav Malchiyo, which first of all what we said Shpud is Rav Malchiyo. So also Shpud, Shvachos, and Gumos, all of them is Rav Malchiyo. And there's another three Gemaras that were said in the name of Rav Malchiyo, Loris and Ephraim Mikla and Gevina. And if you want, that's names of the sugyas. Rashi says what they are. There's no time to go through all of them now. But those three sugyas were the name of Rav Malchi. Which one? Yeah, each one. Shpud, number 1. 2, Shvachos. 3, Gumos. Then again, number 1, Valoris. Number 2, Ephraim Mikla. Number 3, Gvina. Just to point out, there's Aleph Beis Gimel over here. Ephraim Mikla, Valoris, Gvina. These three is Aleph Beis Gimel. That's my own simile. Those are Rav Malchiya.
Luris is Aleph.
Loris is Beis. That's don't take it so seriously. But Loris is a Beis, Ephraim Mikla is an Aleph, and Gvina is a Gimel. Beis, Aleph, Gimel, Aleph, Beis, Gimel. Okay, those three are Rav Malchiya. Papa Amar. Papa argues on one point. The Gemara is going to say that he says that what you said that Shvachos is Rav Malchiyo it's really a Malchiyah. That's what we're coming to say. The Papa says, Masnisa Malchiyah, Shmaitzer of Malchiyah. These 6 members, we have 6 members over here. Shpur, Shvachos, Gumos, and then Bloris, Sefer Mikla, Gmina, six members. So the ones that are based on a Mishnah, going on a Mishnah, or a Brisa, those are of Malchiyah. The ones that are only going on a Gemara, not based on a Mishnah or Gemara, a Mishnah or Brisa, those are of Malchiyah. So in general, everything fits. That Rav Malchiyah said the ones that are Mishnayos and Brisa, but there's one exception over here, that is going to be Shvachos. Shvachos was first quoted as Rav Malchiyah. But Rav Papa says, no, Shvachos is a Mishnah, and therefore it should be Rav Malchiyah. It's an argument. Said this member author said that it was a Malchiyah, and Rav Papa said that's a Malchiyah. V'simanecha, Masnisa Malchasa. A way to remember Rav Papa's listing, the Mishnah rules, Masnisa Malchasa. The Mishnah rules, if you say it in Aramaic, it says Masnisa Malchasa, but the Mishnah rules with a Malchasa with an Aleph at the end, not Malchasa or Malchasa. So you could remember that the Malchiyah is the ones of the Mishnayos, according to Rav Papa.
Was he a Tanna?
No. It's just a way of understanding. It's simple to remember, mnemonic, to remember that the ones of the Mishnah are Malchiyah, like Malchasa. That's just a way to remember, just a mnemonic. What's the machlokes between Rav Chanina ben Ravika and Rav Papa? This case of Shvachos, that according to Rav Chanina ben Ravika, Rav Malchiyah said it, and according to Rav Papa, Rav Malchiyah said it. Okay, that's the end of the sugi. Just to sum up, you're not allowed to use a scale at all. That's not your one. You're not allowed to use a scale at all, not even to protect from the mice, and also not to measure. Maybe by you're allowed to, but not over here. And the next point was about fixing a knife. It came out that Rav Yehuda, big chiddush, here's the big sugya of Ches, that Rav Yehuda says, Machshir Ochel Nefesh is mutter if you were not able to do it before Yantif, and if the pasuk is like that. But Allah Chavein Morin came, don't publicize it, don't tell anybody. If someone sees you doing it, make up a story. But halacha is that you're allowed to do Machshir Ochel Nefesh if it was impossible to do before Yantif. After that, the Gemara had a question if you're allowed to show the row of the knife and machlokes, and if you hold it, you're not allowed to, because it looks like you're doing it to the public, but the Talmud Chacham could lend his own knife. After that, the Gemara says things that you could not have expected would have happened before Yantif, so you couldn't have done it, so Abida will be matir. The case of the Sakin Shanifgam, or the Shput Shanir Sam, Tanav Kibayim, that also that it got full of the Tiach, so you're allowed to clean it out because it's Machshir Ochel Nefesh that you couldn't have done beforehand. The drushes comes al Lachem L'chol Tzarchechem, and this has ramifications on Daf Chav Beis. You're Yehuda, you're allowed to do other malachas also, not only for Machshir Ochel Nefesh, maybe other things also, but that's not our sugya over here. And the last sugya was that, two sugyas, one sugya was that if it just got bent out of shape, but it's still usable, then it's a tircha, so don't do that. And the last sugya was if it became muktzah. So that's a problem. If it became nimas after you used it, so then don't move it away. Maybe a lot of shomtom, manichah b'keren zavis. Maybe do it fast. If it's dangerous, then you're allowed to move it like any kind, like a kos b'shus rabin. If it's dangerous, you'd be allowed to move it away.
Rebbe, as you pointed out in the top Rashi, or the second Rashi, Rashi says big chiddush in Tarud, that would be a heter if you were Erev Yom Tov Tarud. It sounds to me from the rationale of the Rambam, which the Rambam is more worried about a gezerah that you'll be mezalzel in Yom Tov, making it into a chol, that the Rambam would vehemently disagree with that chiddush in Rashi. Does that make sense?
I don't know, but I just have the Mishnah Berurah passes like this. The Mishnah Berurah and Taf Tzadik Ches Sifkat Hey. Taf Tzadik Ches Sifkat Hey. The Mishnah Berurah passes like Rashi, I think. Okay, yes, everybody. Thank you, and Bez Hashem tomorrow again at 11 o'clock. Thank you. Tomorrow regular. Tomorrow's day 11. Bez Hashem. Tell it to everybody.